alayhi wasallam said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَا نَوَى. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said that and let's get into a habit, because until we understand certain things, I want you to develop habits. Whenever you quote the Quran, or whenever you quote the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, indicate that you are only talking about the meaning of what they said, not what they said. Do you follow what I mean? So if I say, for instance, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَا نَوَى. That's what the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said. What does that mean? What meaning is contained in that? I'll tell you. Means that the actions, the deeds, are rewarded, are judged, are weighed by the intention. And every person is going to have what they intended. Right? So that's the meaning of it. Here, let us correct our intention. That we're here to learn for the sake of Allah, to draw closer to Allah, to seek Allah's pleasure, and to earn His reward. That's what we're here for. And if you do that, لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَا نَوَى, and you get that which you intended, Allah will give you all those things, inshallah. So I like your review sessions. Our teachers, they used to have every lesson, they had this habit that they would do this and have us sit in circles and explain, right? So that way you're learning and teaching at the same time. You're rehearsing what you're learning, you're able to convey it, right? And I just remind you of the words of Imam al-Haddad, rahimahullah ta'ala. I think it's very important for us to keep this. Imam al-Haddad, rahimahullah, he said, مَنْ عَلِمَ مَسْأَلَةٍ وَاحِدَةً فَهُوَ عَالِمٌ بِهَا. That whoever learns one case, one religious judgment, right, then that person is a scholar in that. And what is meant by that? You must convey it. Whatever you learn properly, it's your job to convey it, right? So do your best. Don't say, I'm not a scholar, I don't know everything. I know what you know, teach. What you don't know, say, I don't know, right? One of the first things we learn from our teachers, kalimatu la a'lam nisfu din. The word I don't know is half the religion. Don't be afraid to say I don't know. No one knows everything, right? No one. Except Allah. He is Al-Alim. Tell you. So it's quick. The band is doing that. The band is. All right. Is any quick questions about what we covered that didn't get clarified in the breakout sessions? Everyone's clear? Everyone got it? Since you got the concept of the methodology of the SALAF, the methodology of the majority of them, which was a tafweed, and then the methodology of the minority of them, but some of them, was a ta'weel, which is figurative interpretation. We mentioned al-Bukhari, but among the Sahaba, radiallahu ta'ala anhum, and the one who was among the most knowledgeable of them in the interpretation of the Quran is Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas, he was known to make many figurative interpretations of verses related to the attributes of Allah. And I'm going to mention this. So write that just so you have it in your notes. Among them, among the Sahaba, was Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. Ibn Abbas. Abdullah ibn Abbas. And among the Tabi'een was Mujahid. Mujahid, he was the student of Ibn Abbas. And he even interpreted the wajh in one verse as Qiblatullah, the direction which you face in the prayer, the Qibla of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He defined the word wajh as that. Mujahid. Ibn Abbas. Abdullah ibn Abbas. IBN ibn Abbas. Apostrophe A-B-B-A-S.
And you said after who was the student?
Mujahid.
He was the student of
Ibn Abbas. So he was from the Tabi'een, the followers of the Sahaba. Among the followers of the followers, Imam Malik ibn Anas, for all our Maliki brothers. Imam Malik ibn Anas, he made ta'wil as well. And we're going to provide all those things in the future, inshallah, as we continue. Tayyib. So we talked about this verse, Yadallahi fawqa aydihim. And I want you to start to preserve scholars. There's a scholar, his name was Muhammad ibn Sirin. Muhammad ibn Sirin. He was from Tabi'een. Muhammad ibn Sirin, he had a statement. Excuse me. Muhammad ibn Sirin, let's do both of them since we're here. He was from the Tabi'een, from the followers of the Sahaba. And he had a statement that was related in the introduction of Imam Muslim's book As-Sahih, in the introduction. He said, إن هذا العلم دين فانظروا عن من تأخذون دينكم. He said, Muhammad ibn Sirin, verily this knowledge you're learning is the religion. إن هذا العلم دين فانظروا عن من تأخذون دينكم. So look well from whom you take your religion from. It's extremely important to understand that. This religion, this knowledge that we're gathering, is the religion. It's the religion's knowledge. So we should be concerned from how we acquire that knowledge. And for Ahl Sunnati wal Jamaa'ah, the people of the Sunnah, the way we acquire knowledge is by an unbroken chain of transmission, which we call al-isnad. Al-isnad, A-L-I-S-N-A. You can put a bar under the A, or underline the A, and a D. Isnad. One of the great scholars, who was also from the Salaf, his name was Abdullah ibn Mubarak. Abdullah ibn Mubarak. And he was the one among the great early scholars of hadith and other sciences. Imam Muslim related in the same introduction a statement from Abdullah ibn Mubarak. He said, Al-isnadu min ad-din. Walaw la isnad, laqala man sha ma sha. He said, Al-isnad, the chain of narration, is a part of this religion. If it is not for that, anyone can say about the religion whatever they want. That is a powerful statement, right? And why is it important? Because whenever we want to affirm the authenticity of a statement or a saying of a scholar or the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam or the companions or any one of the Salaf, it is important that we establish a continuous, unbroken chain back to them. Right? So, without that connection, we cannot confirm that which is being said about that person. Right? So, Ahlul Sunnati wal Jamaa'ah, and this is for Islam in general, but it is specific to Ahlul Sunnah wal Jamaa'ah because we preserve that. Right? And when I say Ahlul Sunnah wal Jamaa'ah, in AQEEDAH, in the tenets of faith, I mean al-Asha'ira wal-Maturidiyya, the Ash'aris and the Maturidis. And in al-Fiqh, I mean al-Ahnaf, the Hanafis, al-Malikiyya, the Malikis, al-Shafi'iyya, the Shafi'is, and al-Hanabila, the Hanbalis. And in the area of al-Tasawwuf, the various Turuq al-Sufiyya, right? All of them, they have unbroken chains back to the Prophet salawatullahi wasalamu alayhi, right? And all of our books that we relate from, they have chains back to the authors and ultimately back to the Salaf and back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So all the books that you want to quote, that you want to use as references, should have unbroken chains to those books, from you to those books, and from those books back to the one who the statement is being attributed to, right? Among the most famous books that have reached us in relating to the attributes of Allah and His name is a book by the famous hadith scholar and fiqh scholar and knower of Allah, Al-Imam Al-Bayhaqi. Al-Imam Al-Bayhaqi. Somebody got the thing right. Yeah, but I gotta explain that too. Once you learn this methodology, you'll be safe. Don't worry, you'll be all right. You can almost read anything and you'll be safe. But you need the methodology first.
You said Imam Al-Bayhaqi is a known scholar for Arabic.
In hadith, in fiqh, is famous scholar. Imam Al-Bayhaqi. He died in the year 458 after Hijrah. And his book, Kitab Al-Asma' was-Sifat. This is the book I'm going to primarily work from when we're talking about, because I want to give you some points. And he was an early scholar, meaning, you see when he died, that means his sheikhs were students of the Salaf. So it's not like no long 100, 200, 300 years. We're talking about these people who in every statement he makes in his books, there is a sanad, a chain of narration for it. Right? And these books, alhamdulillah, we have continuous change from our teachers back to Sayyidina Imam Al-Bayhaqi. But what about Al-Bayhaqi? Because he was a hadith scholar. He was famous for his work in hadith. And he reached the level of Al-Hafiz. Al-Hafiz is a high rank in hadith, to the extent that some numerated the number of hadith that the Hafiz needs to know around is 100,000 hadith with their chains of narration. So this is Al-Hafiz. So their number, this is Al-Hafiz, they say Hafiz the Quran, the great memorizer. In hadith, the Hafiz, they say around 100,000 hadith he memorized with the chains. Right? That's a hafiz. So Al-Bayhaqi, when he talked about these verses related to the yad of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said that the yad of Allah cannot be understood as al-jariha, as a limb or an organ. And when he mentioned about the verse, Yad Allahi fawqa aydihim, and that is Surah 48, verse 10, he said that what is meant by that, arada ta'zima amr al-bay'ah. He said what is meant by that is that expression, Yad Allah, is meant to venerate the matter of giving oath of allegiance. The act that the companions were doing, it was saying Yad Allah fawqa aydihim. He said, this is ta'wil. He said it's giving veneration to the act, the affair of making an oath of allegiance to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's extremely important. So he didn't understand it as an organ, didn't understand it as a limb for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Imam al-Ash'ari, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, Imam Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari. And you need to put these names down. He died 324 after AH. So if you count the Salaf as 300 years, Imam al-Ash'ari, who was called Imam Ahl Sunnati wal Jamaa'ah, the Imam of Ahl Sunnati wal Jamaa'ah, he was from the Salaf. And he mentioned about the verse where Allah says, Ya Iblis, ma manaka an tasjuda lima khalaqtu biyaday. Where Allah mentioned, oh Iblis, what prevented you to prostrate to that one I created, biyaday, with my yaday, right? He said that وَأَنَّ لَهُ سُبْحَانَهُ يَدَيْنِ بِلَا كَيْفٍ. He said that Allah, He has the attribute of yadayn and without a how. Very important. I'm going to concentrate on this point because he's from the Salaf. So they use this term bila kayf. So the word yad, if you took the word yaday literally, which is not be, you can't say yad literally, right? Or yaday literally would mean two hands. Not befitting to use limbs and organs as Imam al-Bayhaqi mentioned. So here he used this term, Imam al-Ash'ari, bila kayf, which means without a how, without a how. Y'all with me? And many of the Salaf, many of them, they always explained and they did not attribute a term called al-kayfiyya, a modality or a howness for Allah and His attributes. Y'all follow that? So this term is from the Salaf. You're going to find Imam Abu Hanifa use it. Many of the Salaf use this term, bila kayf, without a how. So whenever they say Allah would like have a yad, bila kayf, and Allah made istiwa, bila kayf, Allah had ayn or bila kayf, right? They will use this term without a how. This is very crucial that you understand this. Because when we use the term how about Allah, we're automatically ascribing Allah with attributes of the creation. Y'all follow me? The term how can never be related to Allah. I'm going to give you an example, or some examples. So today, you'll read in some books where some sections, and I have to be explicit so you understand what I'm talking about, right? Can I erase this? Everybody got the big hockey? Just remember these books. Unfortunately, huh?
No.
You good? Okay.
Does the black marker work?
No, I need another black marker. There's one in there I can't find. It's dried out. I can use the blue one. I can try. All right, right. So, what's this thing?
We like cave, some
You said
books.
when you're using the term how, you automatically attribute empathy.
All right, so Bilal Cave, right? And this is negating a modality, if I spell that right, which means kayfiyya. And if you want another word, a howness for Allah or His attributes. When we say bila cave, without a cave, right? So you're going to have today, you have a group, and I need everyone to take their sensitive sleeves and throw it in the trash. We're grown adults, we can have a real conversation. Even if you get offended, I don't mean to offend you. Right? So that's what we already did. Education, we got to speak facts, right? There was, in the early days, two groups, and they're similar. And I'm talking about during the time of the Salaf, towards the end, the beginning of the beginning and towards the end of the 4th century, even sometimes towards the end of the 3rd century. So that means the 4th century, Hijrah, right, is going to be between 300 to 399, right, AH. And the 3rd, right, Hijrah century would be between 200 and 299, right? It's very important that you understand eras, time, right? During those times, there were a strong movement from two groups who shared similar. One was called Al-Mushabbihah, right? Al-Mushabbihah, those who liken the law to His creation. Right? And the other group was called Al-Mujassima. And there are those who ascribed to Allah, wal-iyadu billah, bodily attributes. Now I want you to understand something. When I say bodily attributes, it don't just mean human beings. Everything other than Allah is a body. Is a body. Or a particle from which bodies are made up of. Y'all follow that? Everything other than Allah is a body or a particle from which bodies are made of. I'm going to come back and explain that. Just keep it. Go ahead.
You mean like a table is a body?
The table is a body.
Everything.
Right? This table is a body made up of particles. I'll give you the terms later. Just keep that in mind. Right? Huh?
Everything other than
Is a body or a particle from which bodies are made. Y'all got that? So when I say body, because we have this thing, I describe Allah and they say he's not like the humans. It ain't just about human beings. Like no creation. You follow? Go ahead.
Does the first category include the second category that is for broader, or are they?
Yes. Al-Mushabbiyah and Mujassima are the same. Just Al-Mushabbiyah might not describe Allah as a body. Al-Mujassima, they ascribe Allah with attributes of bodies. Right? Okay. Y'all ever heard this saying? History only repeats itself. That's why you got to study history. Al-Mujassima and Al-Mushabbiyah, today, that name don't exist among people. The meaning and the ideas that were carried by Al-Mujassima and Al-Mushabbiyah in this time exist today. What name do we identify those ideas who say the same thing they said in our time? They are called Al-Wahhabiyah. And Al-Wahhabiyah, they were, where they got their name from, they are the followers of a man named Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. He died in the end of the 18th century Hijra. No, even 14th century Hijra, excuse me. Or maybe 13th. 12 something. 13th century. AH. Right? Around 1792, our time. The followers of this man, they were known as Al-Wahhabiyah in his time. So that's 200 years ago, roughly, right? That name was synonymous among the majority of the Muslim nation, Ahl Sunnati wal Jamaa'ah, as Al-Wahhabiyah. The people of Ahl Sunnah, who were the majority of the Muslims, past and present, whenever they heard about the followers of this people, and they used to call themselves that, Al-Wahhabiyah, that's what they were known. When that name became synonymous with all these bad attributes and other things, they changed that name in our time, in recent times, to the word as Salafiyah. All right, remember I said we're talking, we don't mean no one offended. We're just talking history and facts. Some things are just not disputable. Right. So, because listen, as Salafiyah, so it is a modern group who are actually Al-Wahhabiyah who changed their name. Right? You know, when you get a name change, because most of us be Muslim, right? Some people had English name, they changed it to Arabic name. And when you go to the court, they ask you, are you changing your name to hide something? No, seriously, you ever had is there a reason you're trying to escape creditors or something? Right? So this name, Al-Wahhabiyah, they changed it to Salafiyah because of this. Because when they heard the name of Wahhabiyah, people wouldn't listen at all. But when they changed the name Salafiyah, they ascribe that name, they associate that name, they ascribe themselves to as-Salaf. right? So here, now when you hear the term, you don't think, and be honest with yourselves. When you hear Salaf, what comes to your mind, most of us, to be honest? Huh? Do we think of the first generations, or do we think this name Salafiyya in our mind? Be honest. Most of us, we say Salaf, we say Salafiyya. And the Salafiyya, that group had its origin in the 13th, really 14th century Hijra as a name, which is we in the 15th century, right? So we're talking about like only 200 years. The Salaf, they were all the way back at the end of this time in the 4th century Hijra, 3rd century Hijra, 4th century Hijra. That's the end of the Salaf. So you're talking about a span of 1,000 years. But I want you to distinguish between the two. It's extremely important. Because to understand what we're talking about, the belief of the Salaf, I got to explain to you the belief of the Salafiyya so you don't get confused. Right? Because the thing that most of us get intimidated by when we come across these ideas is because we think we're going against the Salaf. And no one wants to do that. So we got to distinguish between the Salaf and this group called As-Salafiyya. Our teachers, they said don't call them that. Call them by who they are, Al-Wahhabiyya. And that's, right? That's the nice way to use the expression. They have other ones. But no, call things as they are, right? Because if I give you a false identity, you're going to mistake who I am, right? So, and that in hadith, that's wrong. Makes hadith weak. It's called tadlis. You give a name by which you know, everyone know you as this, so you want to pass your narrations, you give your name this, right? There's a lot of that going on, right? But in hadith, we don't accept that. Like, who are you, right? For real. So this group, why am I mentioning it? Because, go back to the Salaf, they use this term bila kayf, right? They use that term, and that is a term that the Salaf use. And many narrations will give you, I don't want to overwhelm you with names. I just want you to get ideas first, and then I'm going to overwhelm you with names, right? They use this term. And the Salafiyya Wahhabis, they use this term too. But they use it with two different meanings, complete different meanings, and that's what I'm going to talk to you about. So y'all got this? So now, here, the Salafiyya movement, I'll give you an example. Where is the Kaaba located now? Question. Yeah. In Mecca. And where is the Prophet ﷺ's mosque located in? And where is Mecca and Medina located? None of y'all said Hijaz. Why none of y'all said Hijaz? Right. It was Hijaz. But when the Saud family took it, they renamed it Saudi Arabia. Right? Saudi Arabia. Hijaz. Did the Prophet know anything about Saudi Arabia? Did the Salaf know anything about Saudi Arabia? No, I want to get you to start really, so people can change a name and then you think that this is what it is. No, that's not what it is. Do you know before 200 years ago, the majority, the scholars, the muftis, the imams, the sheikhs were all Ash'ariyya and Maturidiyya in Mecca and Medina? Before 200 years ago. Easy to show, right? But within 150 years, they wiped it out. Till you don't see them. Till they can't teach, they can't do nothing, right? So I'm just saying, history. I want you to study history. It's very important. And I say something to you. The one who doesn't know history is doomed to repeat it. If you don't know your history, you're going to repeat it, right? So this group, As-Salafiyya, they call, and I want you, they are the same. Because when I tell you they're the same, because if we study the books of the Wahhabiyya, the Salafiyya, their main book in At-Tawheed, talking about Allah, is called Kitab Tawheed, the book of Tawheed. Who is the author of that book? Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. no Salafi, you go in their library, if they're a real Salafi, you're going to find that book or a commentary of that book. So the idea that this is not the same group, yeah, you just look at your books. Your key books are the books written by Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. And what do y'all call him? Shaykh al-Islam. The Shaykh of Islam. That's what they call him. It's fact. So you didn't run from using his words, don't run from using a name. Right? So we can just identify things. Okay, y'all got that. Now, if I talk about Mushabbiha and Mujassima, when did they live? As a group. And they were known as Mushabbiha in Baghdad, in Iraq, Mushabbiha and Mujassima. So, when I'm going to tell you about their ideas, and then I'm going to show you the ideas of Al-Wahhabiyya and Salafiyya, and then you tell me if they're not one and the same. You follow? Among the leaders in the 4th century of the Mujassima and Mushabbiha was a man named Barbahari. But he led them. And all of them, they're teaching his book, Sharh Sunnah, by him. That same, from that group, is one of the main books that they're using in this book from the 3rd and 4th. So they say, this was the belief of the Salaf, who was a man who was a leader of the Mushabbiha and Mujassima in his time.
You say Imam.
It's not Imam, what do they call it, Imam? Barbahari. Right? He's one of their, when they refer to the Salaf and they use the books, you'll find that that's the point of the early belief of the Salaf. Not the belief of, not these early scholars, these people. But they were known in their time as Al-Mushabbiha and Mujassima. Y'all follow? I'm just giving you, I don't want to overwhelm you in names because you're going to get lost. Once you got the concept, then I'll give you names. Right? I want to connect the dots for you. Do you follow my point?
You said the Wahhabis refer to him as their Salaf.
Yeah, when they use books of AQEEDAH, they'll see in recent Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab's book of Kitab al-Tawheed, right? They'll use Buhari's book. He got a book called Sharh Sunnah. Sharh Sunnah, which means explanation of the Sunnah. But alhamdulillah, that's what he calls his book, right? Sometimes I want you to be a fact checker, right? Don't just listen to me, right? Go in some libraries, go in the bookstores and see if this is not what you see. Don't just listen, check, right? I don't want you to blind follow nobody. I want you to learn your religion and be able to actually know what you're saying. Here, so when I'm talking about these books, he was known in that time, study his history, study his group, that was right. Do y'all got the Mujassima, Mushabbiha, and y'all got Wahhabiyya and Salafiyya in our time? Are you ready? Okay, I'm going to erase all that. Go ahead.
How large were the Mushabbiha was in their time?
They weren't large, they just caused a lot of fitna. And the fitna is the same way. It didn't happen to the scholars, it happened to the common people. And the common people follow it the same way. The ulama, most of the people of the world are Ahl-Sunnati wal Jamaa'ah, Ash'ari wal Maturidiyya. But because the common people, they didn't study, they didn't learn, they were exposed to these things. That's just natural, right? Okay. So now, go to this term. They have a concept when they take the verse, Yad Allahi fawqa aydihim. The Yad of Allah is, they said, above their hands. That verse is what verse?
48:10.
Right? So they say, Allah has the Salafis, the Salafiyya, Wahhabiyya. They say, they use this term, and we use the term too. Ahl Sunnah use the same term. Now I'm going to put, and what I'm giving you, I want you to separate. One of the biggest ways we get deceived, we think we all the same. We have this concept, we all Muslim. Sometimes we are, even though we all Muslim, that doesn't mean some Muslims are not misguided. And then sometimes, depending on the issue, you might not even be Muslim when you finish with it. But this is real. There is a such thing as kufr. There is a such thing as bid'ah. And there are levels to one. Sometimes some Muslims are Ahlul Bidah, people of innovation. Sometimes some people who claim to be Muslim are kuffar. They're not Muslim at all, even though they claim to be Muslim.
Then you wouldn't consider the so-called Salafia Muslim because of the blasphemy that they teach and that they believe?
I could not use, never make blanket expressions of kufr. Why? Because most people who follow, common people, they don't even know what's being said. They just hear a word, I think I'm following the Salaf, and they don't even understand the issue, so they're like Qarib Ahdam Islam, they're like new Muslims.
Specifically because of what happens.
If those who know what they're saying and carry their creed and understand what is being said, they're not confused, they're not thinking this one thing's being said and something else, that is kufr.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
If it's that.
Because you know the Wahhabis, their beliefs are kufr.
Right, but that's some people, not everyone. Right.
I'm talking about the majority
Yeah,
of the ones that you know.
what I want to avoid, all of us, because we got to be precise, right? Because there's a danger of that. What is the danger? To judge someone with kufr who's not a kafir. And that comes back to you. So, there's an issue. We want to talk about the issue. This is kufr. Now we're going to wonder the person who's described that. It depends who you are and what you are and where you at. Then that judgment. And that judgment, Islamically, truthfully, should be reserved to judges.
But I mean, if you know for a fact that what they're saying, trying to convince you to believe that Allah has hands, Allah walks here, Allah does this, and we know He's not attributed with these, attributes. And certain things that you say that we know from the Quran is kufr, and they believe and try to convince you.
So that's the individual.
That's what I'm
right?
saying, the ones who believe
That's
actually,
kufr,
the
no doubt.
Wahhabis
With no doubt.
that actually believe that. You wouldn't consider them.
Of course not.
That's what I'm saying.
Anyone who has explicit blasphemous beliefs, and I'm going to give you conditions for that. Follow what I'm saying. I definitely want no one ever to just rush into calling someone a kafir. Seriously, that's dangerous ground. But it also is dangerous to consider iman what is kufr. You got two scales. How do you separate the two? By learning, right? To really learn. This is kufr, this is bid'ah, this is not kufr, right? So, I never want to say blanket, right? It's like say all black people are criminals. It's not true. All black people in the hood, watch it, close your door and close your purse. It's not true. But some of you better close your door and close your purse. But you can't put on everybody. But even me, I'm saying, I'm from the hood. If I go to the hood right now and I see some movement, I gotta watch, right? And I'm from the hood. But that doesn't mean everybody in the hood is like that. But if some dudes catch you slipping, you got it. That's it. Well, same thing. I went ghetto on this train. Yeah. So let me come back to the questions. I got to go stay. Just hold your questions and come back, right? Yeah. So they have this statement, right? They says, and they use Arabic. Lillahi yad la ka'idina. Allah has a yad, not like our hands. So they use this statement, right? They said Allah, and Ahl Sunnah use it, has, or we can say is attributed with, we can use it to translate it more. Allah is attributed, right, with.
Who are you saying that says this? The Yad?
Ahl Sunnah, everybody, even the Wahhabis say it.
Okay.
Yet, not like our hands, right? Right? Tell you. Now follow that. In Arabic, they say lillahi yad, or we say to Ahl Sunnah. It's true. Lillahi yad, la ka'idina. Allah has a yad, not like our hands. So Allah said, yad Allah fawqa aydihim. The yad of Allah is above their hands. That's in the Quran. So Allah did say He has a yad. Now here's what we're trying to get at. Y'all need to follow this, because I'm going to show you Ahl Sunnah on one scale, and Mushabbiha, Mujassima, whom we today identify as al-Wahhabiyya and al-Salafiyya in our time, right? And it sounds like he says name calling, right? I'm getting ready to show you someone from the Salaf who did the same thing. Then you won't feel that way. All right, here. So now there's a question. And I need you to follow this, as this is going to be, you're going to need it for future classes, right? This statement that they use, and now I'm talking about how they use it. I'm not talking about how Ahl Sunnah use it. And let me, before I go this, so we can clear up some things quickly. When I say Ahl Sunnati wal Jamaa'ah, and I'm talking about belief, whenever I say that, when I use the term Ahl Sunnah wal Jamaa'ah, and if I just say Ahl Sunnah wal Jamaa'ah, so you understand what I'm talking about. Whenever I say Ahl Sunnah, and I'm talking about AQEEDAH, I mean, right? Al-Ash'ariyah and Maturidiyah. Whenever I use that term, that's all I'm referring to. When I say Ahl Sunnah wal Jamaa'ah, I mean the Ash'aris and the Maturidis. Now, does everyone know what that means? Yes, no? Yes. Everybody knows. MashaAllah, I'm doing a great job. Yeah. Ash'ari, that means the followers of Imam Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari, the one I mentioned said Bila Kayf. He was from the Salaf. Maturidi are the followers of Imam Abu Mansur al-Maturidi. They are known from the time of their time to today as Imamah Ahl-Sunnati wal Jamaa'ah, the two Imams of Ahl-Sunnati wal Jamaa'ah. So whenever I say Ahl-Sunnah, I'm not talking about anybody else. If I'm talking about somebody else, I'm going to mention them by name, right? So when I'm saying, now when I'm explaining to you, I'm talking about, the people who call themselves Salafiyya, whom we identify as al-Wahhabiyya. So I'm talking about this term, Lillahi yad, la ka'eedina, Allah has a yad, not like our hands. That saying is used by Ahl Sunnah, and it is also used by al-Wahhabiyya and the Salafiyya. All of them say it. We say, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ, right? The Wahhabiyya, they say, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ. And then we go, well, what's the difference? Right? When I'm getting my experience, I'm going to show you the difference. I want you to understand two things. I told y'all before. There is such thing as called a nas, a text from the Quran and the Hadith, a text, right? And there's another thing called tafsirun nas, that is the explanation of that text. There are two different things, don't mix them. There is the text, right, of the Quran and Sunnah, right? That's called a nas. Right? That's the actual text. Allah said, "Laysa kamithlihi shay'un." Right? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Yadullahi fawqa al-jama'ah." No Muslim, anyone who says La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, and they're not crazy, they're going to deny the Quran and say that's not the word of Allah. No one who says Muslim is going to do that. No Muslim is going to deny a well-known, authentic hadith. No one's going to do that, right? Do we agree with that?
Yes.
No one will, right? So now, where's the problem going to come? On this second part, which is called tafsir and nas. The explanation of the text. Right? That's a whole nother story. What do I mean? I know what Allah said But how you understand what Allah is said, I may disagree with. It's not valid for me to disagree with what Allah said. It is perfectly okay for me to disagree the way you understand what Allah said. Do y'all see the difference between the two? And I'm going to be honest with you. I said, it is not okay to disagree with what Allah said or the Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But it is perfectly okay for me to disagree what you understand from what Allah said and the Prophet said. Right? It's two different things. Human beings always want to be right. That's one of our qualities. So we'll make my thoughts the rule in the religion. My understanding what Allah intended. You notice when we were talking about tafweed and ta'wil, that we said tafweed is the safe way of the salaf, and ta'wil, even the meaning you give is not to say that's what Allah intended. So somebody says, for instance, the yad of Allah means Allah's power. It's possible it could have meant that. Is that definitely what Allah intended? You don't know. That's a possible meaning and you may be correct. But to say that's the meaning, no. You have no proof for that. Because Allah didn't say that. You said that. And you said it based on things that are correct. But it doesn't mean that's what Allah intended. You know what Imam Shafi'i said? He was from the Salaf. Imam Shafi'i died in the year 204 after Hijrah. You know what he said? He said, I believe in Allah and what Allah revealed according to how Allah intended it. And I believe what the Prophet, I believe in the Messenger of Allah and what the Messenger of Allah conveyed as he intended it. Not as I intend. There's a big difference. There's a big difference between the two. Right? So, the actual text is one thing. The interpretation of a text is another thing. Right? Because when someone says to me, and they said it, Masjid Muhammad, them deviant Sufis, they deny Allah's attributes. That's laughable to me. We deviant Sufis, that may be true, right? But the part that we deny Allah's attributes is definitely not true. What do we deny? The way they understand Allah's attributes. We don't deny Allah's attributes. You've watched, we talked. This is the third session. How many times we said Allah made istiwa, Allah has a wajh, Allah has a yad, Allah has a ayn? How many times we said that? Many times. And we mentioned Quran and Hadith about that, right? Never denied that. Where is our difference of opinion? The explanation of that, right? So the difference between Sunnah and the Wahhabiyah is this, not this. Wahhabis don't say that this is not the Quran. The Salafis don't say that. What they do is how they interpret it. That's the issue. Go ahead.
Now, can it be ikhtilaf in AQEEDAH or?
It depends. In branches, yes.
In branches?
In foundations, no. In branches of AQEEDAH, yes, there is a difference of opinion. In the foundations of AQEEDAH, in the usul, no difference. But I will give you a way that I will show you explain that too. That's another story. All right. Do y'all got this concept? So we are safe using so we can identify what we're talking about. Okay. Now, when the Salafis use that term, and I'm not going to say Salafi over and over, I'm going to say what we know them to be al-Wahhabiyyah. But you know what I'm talking about, right? Because I really, identity theft is something we know about, right? We know about, seriously, we do, all of us. When someone steals your ID, do you call them you? No, you say, they stole my ID, this is who that person is. And you're going to call the bank and the court and everybody else to make sure you get your identity back. Well, if that's for your personal stuff, religion is more important than your personal matters. Our teachers should say, if you get angry when someone do something to you, or when they do something to religion, you don't have no change, your faith is weak. So this is a serious case of identity theft. And I'm going to show you. Right? So call them who they are. Whom they call themselves. Right? The brother of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, he wrote a book called As-Sawa'iq al-Ilahiyya fi Radd ala al-Wahabiyya. That's his brother. Sulaiman ibn Abdul Wahab, his brother was Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahab, their father was Abdul Wahab. He wrote a book against his brother and he called it the Godly Lightning in Refuting the Wahhabis. His brother, so you know best, it's your brother. You know who you are, right? And he wouldn't have made that name up except as if it was known by him, right? Right? All right. So go back to this, right? So this says, I the Sunnah say it, and the Wahhabi say it, and the Salafi, they use the same thing, right? They say, Lillahi yad, la ka'eedina. Allah has a yad. And now when they translate it, what they're going to say, Allah has a hand, not like our hands. How many of you read in the Noble Quran? Who saw the Noble Quran, that translation? Now, if we're just going to trick each other, man, like, forget it. No, we know these books. They're available. We see it. They'll say, like, Allah has a hand, not like our hand. They use this in their stuff. We see it. So, what they're really saying is, it's a translation, Lillahi yad, la ka'eedina. And the Sunnah say the same thing. When we translate, so I'll just say, Allah has a yad, not like our hands. They're going to say, Allah has a hand, not like our hands. What we're trying to say is the same thing in the term we're using. Now, what it means, that's a whole nother story, right? Y'all follow my point? Okay. When they use this term, there is contradiction. When they use it, when they say it, there's a contradiction. So we can understand what they're saying. You ask them, what do you mean when you say, Lillahi yad, la ka'eedina? What do you mean by that? I got your statement. What do you mean by that? You're going to ask two questions. When you say the yad of Allah, do you mean a real, literal yad? Are you talking about the reality of yad? Or are you talking about the modality of the yad? All right, so that's the statement, right? So let's move it. So are we talking about the reality of the yad? Let's say al-yad. And what are they going to say when they say that? They're not going to use that term, right? They're going to say hand. In Arabic, they'll say yad. They won't say hand. If you talk to them in Arabic, they're going to say yad. All this discussion will be in Arabic, and it's going to sound really the same. When you say English, because you're going to say hand in the name, but if they speak it in Arabic, it's going to sound all the same. So you got to understand what's being said. Because we're asking about, right? What do you mean? It's very important. What you mean by what are you saying? I got your words. What do you intend by that? That's extremely important. And when you want to judge if something is blasphemous or not, one of the main things, if the words are not explicit, you got to know the intent of this person who's saying it. What do they mean by it? Right? That's very important. So you're like, what do you mean by this? Are you talking about the reality, which is haqiqah in Arabic, right? Haqiqah, the realness of that yad. Are you talking about that? Go ahead, one second, man. What do you mean?
No, go ahead. I have a question. Go ahead.
Okay. Do me a favor, write it down so I don't lose my thought. I'll lose my thought. I will. So you don't lose it, write it down.
Oh, I know.
Okay, good. Then, or are we talking about the howness of al-yad? What are you talking about? Right? There is two different things. And the howness is al-kayfiyya, right? That's a question, a legitimate question, right? Because never have a conversation and y'all both ain't on the same page and you know what you're talking about, right? So you want to have a conversation when y'all understand the subject. If you're talking to somebody and you saying one thing and they saying another thing, how you ever going to come to a conclusion? You don't know what is being said. All right? So, why do I say the reality of the yet or the howness of the yet? Why? Because in the language, in the Arabic language, when you say that statement, both meanings are possible. You can be talking about the reality of something, or you can talk about the howness of something. Right? Does everyone follow that part? All right, stop. Wait, question. I'm going to stop because I need you to follow this. It's extremely important. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I get everything that you're saying on point, but what I would like to know, as we already know, Allah never said he had hands. So why would anyone, I don't say Allah is attributed with, you said God, but not like our hands. If he never said he had hands, why would we even say that, even though we know he's not attributed with hands?
Because here's the thing. What did Allah say about himself? Allah said he has yad, right? Yadallahi fawqa aydihim. Allah said about Shaitan, ya Iblis, what prevented you from prostrating? Lima khalaqtu bi yaday. What I created with yaday, right? In Arabic, whenever you say the word yad, the automatic meaning that's going to come to your mind, when you're not putting it in the context, just the word, is hands.
Right, but it has more than one meaning.
Follow me. I got that point.
Right, I
We're
understand
clear
what
on
you're
that.
saying.
See, because you asked me why.
Right.
The why is because of that, right? Without a context, that's what you're going to get. What I want you to do, and let's not do this, follow me. You went to the conclusion before you talked about what got a person to that conclusion, right? You just at the conclusion, and you're right. But that doesn't help the person who didn't even reach the conclusion yet. They still at how they got there. No, seriously. Right? So you just said, you burn the house down. And we don't burn the house down. You never addressed that the kid watched you on the stove and you didn't tell them don't touch the stove and they went and messed with the stove and that's how the house got burned down. You just at the point that the house is burned down. You should. We need to address so that kid don't get there.
Get to the point of even saying that.
Right. So we got to address how did you got there and tell you why that's wrong. So we ain't going to address you for burning down the house. I'm going to address the issue that caused you to burn down the house, which is you touching the stove without being trained.
I'm not trying to be difficult.
No, I'm not. I just want you to follow.
Right, but I'm just saying, we know he does, we know that he's not attributed with hands. Why would we utter out of our mouth Allah is attributed with, even though that has many meanings, but not like our hands?
I'll give you an example. Now, I don't want to be hard on you, but I want to share something with you because I want to help us all, right? Follow me. How many meanings of yet in Arabic?
I don't know exactly how.
That's the same case as the person who said Allah got hands because they don't know no more meanings.
But I know this many
No,
meanings.
I know.
to that.
The person who said Allah got hands don't know even the more meanings you're talking about. All they know is hands. They don't know nothing else. So then I ask you, how many meanings of yet? And you say, I got to stop because that's your limit of knowledge. So we're talking with their limit of knowledge. That's why they're doing it. Our job is to teach you more meanings of yet
Could be power.
and to teach them
Right.
meanings of yet.
Because that's all they know. You're saying that
Exactly.
they know.
That's it.
Even though, like I said, it could be power, it could be anything. We just don't.
Did everyone follow that? So you ask me, why are they doing it? It's because they're evil people? No, that's all they know. That's what you know, that's what you do.
That's what they were taught.
Right. Now, our job is to get us to know more so we won't do the same thing, because we know. So that's what I'm discussing. You follow me? All right, I got to do one thing because I'm watching y'all faces. Pay attention to faces. Save your questions till we finish. I'm going to take 2 more questions, and go ahead.
If somebody, I'm just trying to figure out in this context what reality and howness mean, because if somebody said, what do you mean, the reality of Ahad and the howness of Ahad, I wouldn't understand what they were specifically asked.
That's why, let me finish. Good, right? Because that's why you got to listen and follow. Because it's, but once you understand, it's easy. Okay. How is the reality of something? The reality, haqiqah, is the reality. When the Salafis say in their books, they don't just say Allah has a yad. They add something to it. They say haqiqatan is a real yad. And then when you translate, they say a literal hand. Haven't you seen it in their books? Literally, Allah has a real hand. That's called haqiqah in Arabic. So they say Allah has a yad, haqiqatan. What's the problem with that term, haqiqatan? Number one, none of the Salaf ever said that. None of the Salaf ever said that. That's one. But we can talk about something more I'm going to give you, right? Do you follow that? So if they mean that, we automatically say, what? That's not befitting. Because what is a real hand? What is a real hand? It's an organ that has length, width, depth, limits, a form. The hand on a cup has that, doesn't it? The hand of a monkey has that. The hand on the clock has that, right? Isn't it all of that shared? I'll give you one time I was talking to among those people among them. He said, Allah has a hand. He said, Allah has a hand, but his hand is not like our hands. Just like the clock got a hand, but the hand of the clock is not like our hands. What is that? That's the essence of tashbih. In his mind, he wasn't negating the haqiqah, he was only negating the kayfiyah. Do you understand my point? He's not negating that Allah has a real hand. He's saying his hand is not like ours. But what we understand from Laysa Kamithlihi Shay'in is that Allah does not resemble his creation at all. So whether it is your hand, the hand of a clock, the hand of anything, Allah doesn't have limbs and organs. Do you follow? So once you negate a haqiqah, the literal meaning of hand, you automatically negate any kayfiyah. That's why the early Salaf said, bila kayf. There is no how. Do y'all understand that? No, really, do you understand it? Why? Because what they say Allah has, and they'll say it in Arabic. So we don't trip out about English or Arabic. They'll say in Arabic, Allah has a yad, haqiqatan. Allah istawa ala al-arsh, haqiqatan. Allah has an ayn, haqiqatan. Allah has a rijl, a qadam, haqiqatan. But we don't know the how. Do you follow? That's what they say. Sunnah says Allah does not have how related to him or his attributes, because how is only related to created things. But we both said bila kayf. They said bila kayf, we said bila kayf. What do they understand bila kayf? They didn't deny the realness of a thing, they just deny how it is. So they say Allah's in heaven above his throne, we just don't know how. I'd as soon as say Allah is not above the throne or at heaven because Allah is not a body. You see the difference? Is this clear? Right? So when they're arguing with you, when they're discussing, they are in reality, they're running from this and smashing dead into this. They don't deny that Allah has a real hand or a real foot. What they say, even if they say it in Arabic, it's not going to change the meaning. In your mind, you're saying, as long as they say it in English, let me say you and anybody. If you say it in English, it means, if you say it in Arabic, it's the same thing. Don't matter. You can use Arabic or English. If you keep saying this, this is blasphemous. Right? This is kufr. No matter if you say it English, Arabic, French, Chinese, it's wrong. Do you follow? Don't get wrapped up in word games. You want to know meanings. Meanings. What do you mean by what you're talking about? Right? I'll give you an example. And I'm going to just move away from this for a minute. Farrakhan goes to Mecca. And we live with him. We know him. I don't mean you know him personally. You've experienced, you know the nation, you know what they believe. And he can play all the word games he wants. What we mean by that, now what you mean is not befitting. There is no messenger, no prophet, nothing similar after Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. No matter how you twist it. No matter how you twist the verses of Quran to try to end up saying, it was a message to the black man, it was for, for us because our condition in life. You understand what I'm saying? It's the same thing. It's no different. They talking about a man and they're talking about Allah. Same stuff. No different. Actually, that's worse. We have so much honor for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we should, and we have sometimes a low opinion of Allah. Because we accept this blasphemous stuff about Allah, and we adjust it. Nah, we cannot. So here, I want you to understand this point. Now, to give you an example, so when they use this term, they say we negate the kayfiyah, the howness about Allah, but we confirm the reality. So now, to give you an example, what is the belief of them? They say that Allah is literally above the throne. Now, I'm talking about the knowledgeable one among them, not the unlearned one who don't really know their creed. So because they say Allah's in heaven. The Wahhabiyya don't say that. When they use the term in heaven, they mean above the heaven. That's what they mean. Now you may get someone who don't know their doctrine and say Allah's in heaven. They don't mean that. When they say in heaven, what they mean is above the throne. Right? But even that is negated. Why is that negated? And why is it not befitting? Go back to the first thing we said when we started this class. Allah has the attribute of Al-Qidam. What is Al-Qidam? Right? So that means Allah existed and there was nothing else, as the Prophet ﷺ said, right? So that means the Arsh is a what? Creation. I want to share something with you. Al-Bayhaqi said this about the Arsh. And Al-Bayhaqi died in what year? 458, right? So he was close to the Salaf. He said about the Arsh, he said, Al-Arsh khalqun lillahi azza wa jal. The Arsh is a creation of Allah, right? Maqlukun la yastahilu an yamussuhu, la yastahilu an yamussuhu, yamassuhu kitabun maqlukun. He said, it is a created thing, it's created by Allah, and it is not impossible that another created book would touch it. You heard what he said? Why? Is a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. He said that there is a book written above the throne on it, my mercy outstretches my wrath. And that book is above the Arsh. So Imam al-Bayhaqi is telling you, this book is in contact above Al-Arsh, not Allah. And he said the Arsh is what? A creation. Allah is the creator. So that means if the Arsh is creation, that means the Arsh did not exist. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always existed. Imam Abu Hanifa said the beautifulest refutation in this matter. He said, if Allah was above the arsh, where was he before the arsh was created? SubhanAllah. What a refutation. Abu Hanifa. And he died 158. He was from the Salaf. Abu Hanifa. You with me? He said, لو كان الله على الأرش أين كان الله قبل خلق الأرش. If Allah was, where was he before the arsh was created? Right? That's heavy. Think about it. Right? Here, I want you to get this concept, and I'm going to take a break. Do y'all got this concept? Because the issue with Ahl Sunnah and the Mushabbiha of our time, the Mujassima, is we negate this reality. We don't assign a literal, because you can use another word for this. Al-Zahir, both of these mean literally. Right? Ahl-Sunnah do not ascribe to Allah literally anything when it comes to his attributes. What does that mean? What we mean by literally means the first thing comes to your mind when you hear a word. Whenever you hear a word, the first thing that comes to your mind, that's the literal meaning. Right? Every other word meaning is figurative in relation to the apparent meaning, even though it's a meaning of the word, right? Right? Do y'all follow it? This is extremely important that you understand this. This is the difference between Ahl-Sunnah wal Jamaa'ah and the Salafiyya Wahhabiyya. That's the main difference. And if you once you understand this, whenever Ahl-Sunnah say that Allah has these attributes, but they are not like, they negate anyhow because it's not befitting of Allah. Right? Now, I'm going to show you that in...
You got time.
Keep going.
You got time.
Okay. When we talk about al-istiwa, the attribute of al-istiwa, which some erroneously translate to mean rose above, to mean established, to mean sit or sat in relation to al-arsh. The belief of the Salaf, whenever they heard the verse of al-istiwa, what did they say? Allah has the attribute of istiwa bila kayf. Right? They didn't deny istiwa. Be careful. 43 verse 3. What does that verse say? I told y'all. Come on. Yeah.
What do you say again?
Surah 43 verse 3. What is that verse talking about? I put it in your notes. We revealed this Quran as an Arabic Quran. So the Quran is Arabic, right? Be careful with denying Allah's attributes from your understanding. Follow the way of as-Salaf. Allah has an attributes. They don't resemble the attribute of creation, and stop. Right there. You'll never have an argument. Right? Don't translate it. We talked about this, right? So they say, نفينا عنه التكييف إذ ليس كمثله شيء وهو السميع البصير. Salaf, they said, we negate about Allah any howness, any modality, because nothing resembles Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and His attribute with hearing and sight. Right? We negate any howness for Allah. Not there's a how that we don't know. I can put it this way, you'll get it, man. It's not like I can look at you for a while. You know what they say? They say Allah is established above the throne. Really, but we just don't know how. There is a how, but we don't know it. You follow? They said there is a how. Write that down. So you understand what they're saying. Because you're not just listening to me, you're going to research and you're going to, right? Okay. So what they say about this, with all the attributes of Allah, every attribute, they say, Allah, wal-iyadu billah. I said they say. Let me give you an important rule. I got to teach us how to talk. Right? There is a rule. Hikayatul kufr laysa bi kufrin. When you quote blasphemy, disbelief, that is not disbelief. We're not allowed to say blasphemous words, kufr. So when we have to explain something, we quote. Sometimes the quote can be at the beginning of the statement or at the end of the statement. But you remember when that guy was saying that stuff, and I said translate, but make sure you use quoting words? I don't want him to say kufr. Because if I make him say kufr, what happens? I fall into disbelief. Because the one who's pleased with disbelief is a disbeliever. So you don't want nobody, like, to win the argument, I want you to commit blasphemy. No, don't want that. So you have to use quoting words, right? And Allah said, the Jews said this, the Christians said this, right? So they say about Allah's attribute, Allah has in English, if you're talking to somebody, they're going to say a hand, right? Or they say he's established above the throne, or he has an eye, or he has a foot, or whatever, right? I'm just saying because this is what you want to hear Arabic. Y'all want to hear Arabic, right? So no need, we ain't in to impress them, we want to learn, right? So that's what you're going to hear. What they mean by that, all of them, they mean, yeah, they just don't know Arabic. They mean istiwa, they say established, they mean istiwa. They say eye, they mean ayn. They say lights out. Whatever.
Keep teaching.
We got lights.
Is it storm outside? I want to see if the, oh, I don't trust y'all that much. Oh, really? Hey, nah, I'm joking, but I'm serious.
Say be like Cave one more time.
Many of my teachers have been killed in this issue. So I'm watching and I'm watching. Right? And believe me, especially with us, it ain't too many of us talking like this. So that's, you out there, you know? So, alhamdulillah, I'd like to get back to work. All right, so with this, so let's get that part. Whenever, have a good opinion of people. Seriously, let's work on that. We need to have it. Some people just don't know. And you got to teach them, right? There is a rule. Some things are necessarily known of the religion, right? And if you deny them, you are a disbeliever. Unless you are someone who is so new to Islam, there is no way for you to learn your religion. Let me explain something to you. Most of the people had no way to learn their religion. Most of them. At all. Honestly, you want to give an example? How many of us, you don't have to raise your hand because I know the numbers, actually studied a whole book with a teacher? That's the standard in Islam. Like that's how you're supposed to learn. But we didn't even have the opportunity for that. We have no idea of how to even learn the religion. So be honest with us, right? Teach me, right? Here's what I'm saying. So when they say that, understand what they're trying to say, right? The meaning is the meaning. We want you to fix your errors. Because in their mind, if you say Allah doesn't have a hand, or is established or rose above the throne, or has feet, they think you deny Allah's attributes, and you look like the crazy one. Because they don't know what you're talking about. When you say Allah has a yad, they don't know Arabic. They don't know what the word yad means. So to you, to them they're saying, for you, you might as well say anything because they don't know what yad means. You know what yad means, that person don't. So you got to explain, no, Allah said in the Quran this. And what you understand is not what Allah said. But if you don't tell them that, every book they got said Allah got. Every translation we got, except by a selected group of learned people who ain't doing enough work. I'm going to be honest. We're not doing enough work. We're doing a lot of talking. But actual work, the ones who's putting that out are working their tails off, and we just talking. So until we provide an alternative, we better understand that we are allowing people to be like that. We got to do the opposite, right? So let's get what you understand, because that's not the only problem. So, because if that was a problem, as long as you speak Arabic, there's no problem, right? So let me fix that delusion. Just because you learn Arabic don't mean you will know Islam. Many people that know Arabic, speak Arabic fluently, and still confused. So we got to fix the confusion, right? Even in our big universities, like Azhar, they got a problem with people talking like this. In Azhar, in Beirut, where's big scholars in Sham, you got people in the universities. What is this? It's real. So we got to talk about the real issue. All right. So when they say that, what they're going to say when you ask them, to clarify, because you should ask, you want to make sure, because if they're in blasphemy, you want to get them out, right? And if they're not, you want to make sure they're not there. You want to teach them. So they would say, Allah has a hand, but we don't know how is his hand. That's what they'll say. So in other words, in Arabic, if they said that, Allah has yet, but we don't know the kayfiyah of his yet. There is a kayfiyah, but we don't know. There is a how, but we don't know it. Only Allah knows the how. Ahl Sunnah, they don't say that at all. There is no how for Allah. Right? Do you follow that? Now how, if you negate the how, you negate the literal meaning. Right? But you can establish a literal meaning and just claim ignorance of the how. Right? Let me put it in a way you understand even better. How many of you have been to the Amazon rainforest? Is that what it's called? How many of you been there? You, lucky you. Isn't it beautiful? I ain't been there. I don't know what it looks like. I just imagine. But here, so you saying it's real, and I'm saying it's real. But you can know the how of it. I just don't. I've never been there. What they're saying about Allah is what I would say about the Amazon rainforest. I know it exists. I know it's real. It's literal. But I just don't know how. Where Ahl Sunnah say, no, that cannot be attributed to Allah at all. Do you follow the difference? Is this clear to everyone? Let's stop here and make sure anyone has a question about that. Because I'll show you in their books. And let me help us. Don't waste your time with people who didn't make this stuff up. Right? Don't waste your time with the people who didn't make it up. Meaning you got people who's telling you what Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab wrote in his books. He's only a parrot. You don't know what he's like. He's repeating that. So deal with the issue that Muhammad ibn Abdul started there. Deal with him. And then fix the one that's following him, whether blindly or not. Because you know why people say I don't follow madhab? What do they call that? Blind following, right? No one is bigger blind following than them. No one. Right? No one is blind following them. More than them. Why do I say that? Because, think about it. I had a guy come to me. I played him a tape. It was the funniest thing. He was a fanatic of Nasiruddin al-Albani. Fanatic. Al-Albani said, Al-Albani is the leader of their hadith side, quote unquote. Right? So we driving, and I put in the tape. It's back of his tapes. I put in the tape. He's like, Alhamdulillah, who's that? I said, Al-Albani. You don't get it? Did I miss that? He didn't even know who he was. Oh, you know, Al-Albani. I put the tape in. I let it play. He's listening. He said, D, who's that? I said, Al-Albani. He's following, he don't know. Right? So, what I mean is, deal with Al-Albani. That's the issue. Right? Because if you straighten that issue, you solve his issue. Right? All right, great.
I got a question about the word haqiqatan. Does that word in itself, the meaning of it means physical? Can you say something exists haqiqatan, but you don't mean physically?
No.
No, it only means
No. Say something haqiqatan, that means it's physical, it's real, it's literal.
something can be real without being physical.
Like what?
An idea, a concept.
An idea is Arab.
Arab?
Yeah. No, you don't know. Okay.
What's Arab?
That's an attribute of a particle, and particles make up bodies. You can't have an idea without a body that the idea is contained in. Ideas don't exist without a form.
And if you take it to English, idea.
If I take you out of your body, there is no idea for you.
No, but conceptually, I mean, idea.
And a conception is a thought, and a thought is contained in bodies. This is Tawheed, huh? Right? You don't have a thought or a conception without a body for that to dwell in.
For example, using a metaphorical, Allah say one of the meanings you mentioned for yet is power. Can power have a haqiqah or power is gairu haqiqah?
Power can have a haqiqah in relation to human beings, and it's still a form. But in turn to Allah, it doesn't have a haqiqah which you're going to relate when you talk about human forms. Because power in related to humans also have its opposite, which is what?
Weakness.
But when Allah mawsufun bi qudra, does he have an opposite for that? Absolutely not. Because the opposite of power, which you would understand haqiqah in literal terms, related to created, has an opposite that is a defect. When Allah mawsufun bi kulli kamal yaliqu bi, Allah is described with every perfection, and you can't attribute to Allah deficiencies. وَمُنَزِّهًا عَنْ كُلِّ نَقْصٍ. He's transcendent upon every deficiency. You follow? So,
But we wouldn't call it gairu haqiqah.
no, we won't even say haqiqah. We say Allah mawsufun bi qudra. We won't use that term. That's it. You never hear somebody say Allah is attributed with a literal power or an actual power. He's attributed with power, complete power. Qudratu tamma. Right? Not haqiqatan. You follow? Because whenever you use this term, you talk about created things like that. Right? You're not talking about Allah. Do you follow that? This is extremely important. Because some people ask me like, And they say, even me, y'all know I'm kind of hard on these ideas. Now you know why. When you start to understand, it's two different religions. You want me to be real? It's two different religions. That's not Islam. We don't believe the same thing. I get angry when somebody says, we're all Muslim. That's not Islam. We say, Al-Sunnah, Allah exists without a place. They say, Allah is in a location, literally. And you must believe that. If you don't believe it, it's kufr. Are we people that don't know our Lord?
I had someone say we worship spook, we worship a spook.
That's kufr.
Because we're not in agreement with
Because what is a spook? Does a spook have a form? It's invisible. You don't know the form. But there is something you imagine, you conceptualize when you say a spook. We don't conceptualize Allah. Laysa kamithlihi shay, not even your thoughts. You follow what I mean? That's Sunnah. One Jewish rabbi, he said to me, he said, you know, we got monotheistic religions. Because we had an interfaith stuff, interfaith. And I was talking, and they said, Imam Amin, he's going to be harsh, we'll get prepared. I said, we don't believe in God the same. We believe in God. They have a misconception of God. It's not the same. We're not monotheists. They are blasphemers, not monotheists. They believe Allah created the heavens and earth in 6 days and got tired and rested. That's kufr. So how we say we believe? That's not God. Allahu la ilaha illa huwa la ta'khudhuhu sinatun hayyul qayyum la ta'khudhuhu. They said he get tired. So that's not Allah. That's your fantasy island of God. It's not God. Had it been God, why would the Prophet ﷺ come tell the Christians and Jews to embrace Islam? Didn't he tell them about Allah? Didn't he tell them to embrace Islam? He didn't say, y'all believe in God and we believe in God and that's it. No, he didn't say that. So the same thing, you apply. The one who thinks Allah is in a place, in a location, and moves, and got limbs and organs, that's not God. That's a jism, a body, that is created in need. And that is preposterous to say about God. Right? I'm not looking at your uniform. I'm looking at what's in your heart. I know the uniform of Islam. And my thobe, pants, up, beard, long. I got all that. Beautiful. But that doesn't represent Islam. That's identity theft. You dressing like me, but you're not me. Like, I got it, but that's not me. That's not my religion. And if one thinks that's your religion, that means you're confused about your religion. And we need to fix it. And to me, that's more important than everything else. And that's not to me, that's Sunnah wal Jamaa'ah. That's why our scholars wrote all these books and explained us. So if this is the case, why did they do all this writing? They wrote it. You saw the books and too many. Why did they do that? Because those things are not befitting to say about our Lord. You follow us? Good. That's tantrum. Please let us learn seriously. And we got to go through these steps so I can actually show you in books. And I can actually start pointing in names and, right? Because we've been duped too much as a people. Too much. Everybody come and sell us a bag of goods. And you know why they're able to do that? Because we don't learn. We just follow. Right? We don't. And sometimes a person is right. But sometimes they're dead wrong. And we can't identify them. Right? They're dead wrong. But La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Go ahead.
Yeah, what about the people, because one of the arguments that I've heard Wahhabis make and said that we are wrong for assuming that they assume a literal interpretation to begin with.
We are wrong.
That's what they
Okay,
say.
so question you asked. That's why I said we go to this. So I'll bring your books of your ulama with them saying it. Now, how do you explain that? You say, okay, I didn't attribute to you. Here is Sheikh Salih Fawzan in his book, and this is what he said. Okay, so maybe you not the one. You don't believe that. Remember I said don't judge everyone? Maybe that's not you. But that one you call your sheikh, he's explicit about that. Maybe you just didn't know. And guess what? You know what they're going to say? Is I got this big Salafi I'm working with now. Every time I do that to him, oh, I don't believe that. I don't take everything from him. Oh, you got your own little app. I got it. So, because you may not, that person may not say that. But you told me this person is the sheikh, this is the great scholar. Okay, this is what he wrote in his book. Here's his book. It's published. Here's it is from his teachers, his students. That's what he said. Right? That's where I'm going. That's where I'm going with this. Like, I want you to know. So I gave 2 books today. Which books I gave you? Come on, come on, come on. Kitab al-Asma wa Sifat. Who wrote the book?
Imam Bayhaq.
When did he die?
458.
5th century, right? He's close to the Salaf. Why I mentioned that book? Because we have a continuous what?
Isnad.
And all of his narrations he has within them. And who said about the Isnad, it is part of the religion without anyone can say whatever they want?
Abdullah bin Mubarak.
And where is that mentioned?
Sahih Muslim
And
introduction.
where in Sahih Muslim?
Introduction.
Oh, big difference in say bring your proof. Right? Do you notice something? The first that we had made a claim. And we know who was attending, right? And I was making those statements. And what did I say? Here's the books right here. Anyone who disagrees, show me. That statement of bring your proof is only works for someone who don't know. Bring your proof. I'll tell you, here's my proof. Yeah, we have proof. Ahl Sunnah are mountains, giants. We have scholars for 1,400 years in every Islamic science. They did it. They cannot talk about Islam except because of our scholars. And Sunnah wal Jamaa'ah. Now, if you accept the last conclusion, Imam, what do they say? We take from them in this, but they was all misguided in what?
AQEEDAH.
Imam An-Nawawi was a great scholar of hadith, but he was misguided in. Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani was a great scholar of hadith, but he was misguided in. Al-Qurtubi was a great mufassir, but he was misguided in. At-Tabari was a great mufassir, but he was misguided in. Abu Hayyan was a great linguist, but he was misguided in. Subhanallah. Like, what are we going to do? If all of our scholars didn't know Allah, why we should take anything else from them? You don't even know God. One of my teachers said something, and I remember this when I was a student. I'll share this and I'll answer your question. We were sitting in a session, right? And one brother said, so-and-so, you know what they do now? You have all of our Muslim so-called scholars quoting a bunch of non-Muslims. They don't even quote the Prophet no more. Professor so-and-so, or this intellectual thinker, like that's some stuff to say. Some said that in a session of my teacher. And he said, who cares what he said? He was stupid. And the guy was like, and honestly, I was sitting there like, shit. What kind of behavior is that? And then he said, you want the proof he's stupid? He don't even believe in God. I said, damn. You figured all that out, but you don't figure out as a guy. How smart are you? And I was right. I mean, like, maybe it came out kind of harsh, but he said he didn't even figure out his God. He didn't figure out there's a creator. So, I mean, this is important. Go ahead. Any questions? We can give a break. Please, Ahl Sunnah, please. Now, go ahead. Is it 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock? 4. Okay, cool. We're not. Great. You're not tired? Cool.
Yeah, but keep going.
Go ahead.
Who?
Oh, someone was. Oh, you was first, right?
Me?
Go ahead.
Roughly 2 pages back in my notes, I was pumped up and excited about you going over the Shabihat and
Mushabbihat, Mujassima.
the comparison between them and their beliefs and the Salafis and whatnot, and you just blew past that.
No, I didn't mention. Here, the Mushabbihat,
Yeah, what were
they said that Allah is literally above the throne.
Okay.
The Salafis say Allah is literally above the throne.
Okay.
The Mujassima, they said that Allah literally has hands
Oh.
and a body. And that is all of the same thing of the Salafis.
Gotcha.
All of those matters, when you study their creed, it's the same creed as them.
Is there any like surviving books and stuff from them?
Yeah, all their books. They're publishing them, right? All of their books that they use are the books of the Mushabbiha. You want to give an example? Now, I know this is not popular. What is the religious text for AQEEDAH of ISIS? Al-Qaeda. Do anyone know?
Kitab al-Tawheed.
Kitab al-Tawheed of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahab. Did you know that? The main book that they use to learn their belief is that book. And something similar? That's the book. Now, I didn't make it up. That guy, Abu Bakr Baghdadi, that's the book he teach from. That's their books. Kitab al-Tawheed. Like Kitab al-Tawheed. That's what they call the book. And I didn't make it up. They got their black flag in there. Kitab al-Tawheed. That's real. The same thing. You don't see them holding up Jamaa'ah al-Tawheed or AQEEDAH. No. Yeah, that's the Mushabbiha. So if you study, when they quote the scholars they give emphasis to, all of those scholars in their time were known as Mushabbiha and Mujassima. Right? So, as we go, I'm going to point the names so you know. Because if I talk in the abstract, you know what I'm talking about. But if I give you the names and you do your homework, the object's not just come listen to me, do your research. Right? Okay. Here's what they said. Here's the books. Here's their statements. Here's the books of Ahl Sunnah. Because we talk about the Salaf. So we mentioned the books of Salaf. Now, the problem is, a lot of these books are not translated into English. So what I say to all of you, you must learn, it's important that you learn enough Arabic so that you can read and follow. Right? You need it. Because if you can read and follow, no one can trick you. Right? Even if you ain't, right? So like a guy says, one of the things I said, don't talk to him, he's going to trick you with Arabic. You know Arabic better than me. Here's the books, read them. Right? Not a trick. Here's the book. Read it. Right? The references are there. We didn't write the books. The books been here for hundreds of years. They have chains of narration. You can't change it. All you can do is do what? Do your interpretation stuff. But the text, you can't mess with that. One of our people in our chain, he was a great scholar. He lived at the he died at the beginning of the 13th century, around 1205 AH. His name was Muhammad Murtada al-Zabidi. Write this name down. Muhammad Murtada al-Zabidi. He was known as the seal of the Arabic linguist. That means no one after his time reached his level in the Arabic language. He was a master of hadith. Right? Go ahead. Muhammad Murtada, M-U-R-T-A-D-A, Az-Zabidi, A-Z-Z-A-B-I-D-I-Y-Y. All right, right on the board. Hey, if we be humble, right? Let's be humble and say, let's be humble and be honest, right? It's okay. Say we don't know, right? We don't know. We're not scholars. We're learning, right? But we do know scholars who knew. Way more than most of us, right? So we can point to what they said, right? We can point and let them refute them. If you want to have that discussion, okay. You might can tell me you're an electrician because I'm not one. But let's get a certified electrician and see how much you know. It's a big difference, right? So his name is Al-Hafidh. And what do I mean by Hafidh here? Whenever I use Hafidh, what am I talking about? Hadith. I'm not talking about somebody who memorized the Quran. Right? Al-Hafidh is talking about a major scholar in Hadith. Right? His name is Al-Hafidh Muhammad Murtada al-Zabidi. He died 1205 AH in Egypt, right? Why did I mention him? Because he was one of the foremost scholars of narration and everything in his time, right? He said a statement that I want you to write down, right? He said there is no book in Islam or scholar in Islam anywhere except that I have an unbroken chain to that book or to that scholar. That's deep. He said there is no book on the face of the earth, Islamic book, or scholar except that I have an unbroken chain to him. Now someone who can make such a statement, that means they know their stuff, right?
That he has an unbroken chain to Prophet Muhammad?
No, to any scholar or any book in the Islamic world.
Himself.
Himself. From me,
That's what he's quoting.
That's what he's saying about himself. There is no book, Islamic book, well-known, book known, right, or scholar, except that from me I have an unbroken chain to him. So that means any book we talk about Islam, Muhammad Murtada al-Zabidi has a chain to it. Any scholar we talking about, Muhammad Murtada al-Zabidi has a chain to him. That's heavy. That's a strong statement. And now, so why do I say that's significant? For him to make a statement like that, right? That means he's one of the foremost scholars in his time. Number one, he's saying something about our religion, right? He's saying our religion is not unbroken. Unbroken. You can't fabricate our religion. That's what he's really saying in that. You can't fabricate the religion in me. Anything you come up with, I'm on it. Got it. Right? Then not only that, he's also telling you that our religion is connected, which Imam Muslim related from Abdullah ibn Mubarak. He's telling you that was in the 2nd century. He's in the 13th century saying that. That's 1,100 years later. He's saying our religion is connected, not broken, and I'm the proof of it. Right? Now, so that means all the books, he has a chain of narration to it. So we're talking about Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawud, Tafsirs, whatever you want to talk about. Any science, there's a chain from him to it. Right? An established chain. And for him to make that statement, and then he talks about Ahl-Sunnati wal Jamaa'ah, and he says, Ash'ari Maturidi. If you stand right in there, you'll be frozen in 5 minutes. Right? He says, Ahl-Sunnah wal Jamaa'ah, Al-Ash'ira wal Maturidiyya. He said that. Now, who said that? That's not anybody. As opposed to someone, I'm just giving you an example. Al-Albani, for instance, when they consider scholar of hadith, and they always quote him, and he's the man, who didn't even have 100 hadith with a chain of narration. Not even 100. Not 100,000, not 100. Who didn't learn from teachers and books. He learned in Al-Maktabatul Zahiriyya, the Zahiriyya library in Damascus, with no teachers, reading books, and books don't talk. Are we going to take an opinion of someone like that, or opinion of someone like that? If we're going to take opinions, if we're going to say, okay, I'm weighing, right, and we know it, we're always going to look for the professional if we can afford it, and the hookup guy, we're going to leave him out. We're only going to use him when we don't got no money. And we're going to hope, please don't mess it up. We know it. Why, when it comes to our religion, we do the opposite? And I believe it's because we don't know that our religion is authoritative as it is. That's what I honestly believe. And once we know our religion is authoritative as it is, then we'll take the right course. We'll rely on the right stuff. But without that, as Muhammad ibn Sirin said, verily this knowledge is the religion. So look well for whom you take your religion. All right, y'all ready for break now? More questions? Or we done? Go ahead, I'm sorry. No, go ahead, go ahead. I don't know if y'all overwhelmed, because if I go to the next thing, I think it'll be too much. They're overwhelmed. Okay, go ahead.
When we're speaking on the people taking liking Allah to the creation, right? And then when we tried to correct them, and they said we don't sit with the Muqtada. Do you think that's a fear of them learning, and then also their students lack of them wanting to learn themselves, and the fear of being rejected, and that's why they don't want to learn or sit with other people to learn where they're incorrect at?
No, I think that's how cults control people. I think that's how cults control people. Whether they're cults from Ahl Sunnah or cults from the Wahhabis. That's how cults control people. I was laughing this morning. I remember, we all had our cult time. Don't act like we didn't, right? If you've been around Islam enough, you've been in a cult. Come on, stop it, right? And you just discovered later, he was following that. No, and if you've been around long enough, you've been in several cults. Right? I'm just being real. You might not call it that, right? But what is the main characteristic of a cult? They don't want you to study. They don't want you to listen to nobody else. They only want you to listen to them so they can control your brain. And I was laughing, coming. You know how I learned most of this stuff? Because the cult I was in that wasn't a cult, the cult that I was in that wasn't a cult, they wouldn't allow me to read books. So they wouldn't give you no book. So all I could do was write what the sheikh was talking about. That's it. I wasn't allowed to have a book. And I laughed today, because we was having a story, we was really cracking jokes. Now, books all over the place. I remember when I was starting, you weren't allowed to read a book. Now you publishing books left and right. What happened? Games. Oh, yeah. Like, but you know, we all grow up and we get it. Don't be like that. I remember one of my teachers from Egypt, he said something to me, and I looked at him like he was crazy when he said it to me.
What did he say?
He said, I want you to study the books of Al-Albani. I said, huh? For real, if you'd have saw my face, it was the first time I ever thought of really having disrespect for my teacher. He said, I want you to study the books of Al-Albani. But out of adab, you know what I said? Okay. And that's when he made the condition. I wanted to learn certain books. He said, I'm not going to teach you these books unless you go study those books. And I went and studied them. And to this day, I'm so grateful for him telling me to do that. You know why? Because when I talk about Al-Albani, I ain't guessing. When I talk about his errors, I know exactly what I'm talking about. And one of our teachers, he wrote about Al-Albani. He said, I wrote in his book, I searched his errors, I got up 1,200 and I got tired. So one of them said, if one wanted, he could rewrite a book, Al-Albani refutes himself. But that's someone who's researching. That ain't someone who's blind following in the cult. That's a serious researcher. You said, listen, because you know what? Al-Albani, I'm using it as an example, he wasn't a scholar of hadith like we think. He was a page flipper. And what would happen is, because he relied on books, he had nothing in his mind, he would write something one time, and as time go on, he forgot what he wrote. And he would make the mistake. He would correct his own stuff he wrote and say it was wrong. So one time he said the hadith was sahih, and one time it's da'if. The same hadith with the same chain of narration. Why did he do that? Not because he was a bad person. I mean, somebody would say, oh, he's a bad. I don't think he was a bad person. I just think he was misguided. And he was deluded. And he made mistakes. That we don't accept the mistakes because automatically we say he was a bad person. He had, maybe he was, maybe I don't know his heart. I just know what he did wrong. And that's all we deal with. As for his heart and his affair with Allah, that's his business. But what he did, right? No one, you know, that's, we talking about the mistakes, right? That's all we're talking about. The errors that he made in the religion, right? And those errors affect us today. They wrote a book, Blind Following the Madhabs. Anyone saw that book? You ever heard that book, a little small little pamphlet? Did you read it? Mm-hmm. Did you read about the author?
It was replete with proofs and evidences to refute you, man.
No, it was filled and overwhelmed with proofs refuting himself. Like, all of his sheikhs were followers of madhabs. Every quote he made was a follower of a madhab. I read with my wife, I said, read this book. Come on, let's look. This is this person, this is this person, this is this person. I said, what is he talking about? Every book he quoted. But how did we know that? Through our asani, through our chains of narration. Right? That's how the Sunnah. So, please, please, please. This, we said, 4 series. It's really like a 30 series, but 4 just to give you the point, right? Now what I'm going to do, and we can do it now, we'll take a break and we'll start. And then we'll pray Asr and the food's ready after that. So we can eat first and then pray Asr. Because the food may be awaiting. But I want everyone, I hope I got enough. Can we start with the sisters first, brothers? Make sure all of the, I'm not really that generous, I'm just, because my family's here, I'm acting. But, stop. Whoever got one, got one. But I need you to bring this text every time you come, because we're going to finish this book. And now I'm going to start today, but I'm going to match everything we talked about through this text. And if I would prefer, here's my challenge, for you to memorize it.
The one from, when you saw us, is that the same thing?
Yeah, same thing. The same thing. But I want you to concentrate on the text, right? Because I'm going to point things in the text that I need you to know the text and don't mix the text between some explanation. So that's why I'm giving you the text alone. Huh?
Because I want to be here for this. Is this going to be a continuation on a weekend or is this going to be during the weekend?
No. It's going to be every other month on a weekend. We're trying to figure the next date. I'm not trying to overwhelm you. I would prefer to do it every month, but that's a lot. People's traveling, and every other month, I think it would. And I'm sorry for skipping, but Ramadan came. So let us take a 5-10 minute break. Water and something quick. Is Oscar in yet? No. All right. So I want to start that text. Let's take a quick 10-minute, 15-minute break. 10-minute break, and then we'll start, and I'll start that text.